When I was a beginning woodworker, my first power tools were an electric drill and a circular saw. But you know, most woodworking projects require straight, square cuts. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these precision jigs, and best of all, we're going to do it just using that circular saw and drill. Now these jigs can be short, or they can actually be very long. And you can even make them for other cutting tools like your saber saw, for instance. And they will give you the ability to make long, accurate rips with the grain and square cross cuts without having to have a table saw or a miter saw. I'll be making my jig out of a piece of this 1/2-inch CDX plywood that I bought some time ago. It's almost 24 inches wide, and I'm going to cut it off about 24 inches from the end. And you'll see those blue lines on the edge, so that's a good factory edge, and that's important. You're going to need a factory edge or a straight edge because you don't have the tools to make one right now, correct? Unless you know someone with a table saw. Whenever I use loud power tools like a circular saw, I always use my earmuffs to protect my hearing. And I'm just going to freehand cut this off. So here's our board. I marked the factory edge here, which is this edge, and that's going to be your straight side, and this is going to actually be your saw guide, okay? Next, I want to cut a piece off the front of the board. So I'm going to measure that out 5 inches on each end. This will be our cutting line, and I'm going to mark it here with my straight edge. And I'm going to cut this as straight as I can. Of course, folks, it's not really critical that this particular line be super straight, okay? Here we go. Remember, this is our straight edge. Now we're going to measure the saw's base now, so I want to unplug this for safety. And what we want to do, pull this back and measure the distance from here to the end of our guide. Okay. So this is 5 1/8 of an inch for me. Okay. So there's 5 1/8, and I'm going to add a quarter, so I'm going to make it 5 3/8. And we'll be cutting that off. And on this side of the board, same thing. I'm going to make it 5 3/8. Now we're not going to cut this. What I'm going to do is we're going to line up this factory edge with that. And that's going to be your guide. Let my line just show all the way across. This is a number 8 countersink, and I'm going to adjust it and make it for the right depth. So let's check it up and let's get to drilling some holes. Now 1/2-inch plywood is never really 1/2 inch thick. With these two sandwiched together, we probably have about 7/8 of an inch thickness. So don't assume that if you double up 1/2-inch plywood that you'll be able to use 1-inch long screws. By the time you countersink them, they will definitely stick through the board, and then they're going to scratch up the wood surface that you might use this jig on. That's why I'm using number 8 3/4 inch long screws here. And I'm still going to check under the board to make sure none of the screws came through. So now we'll cut off the excess. Make sure that the base plate of your saw remains in constant contact with the guide here, this surface. So now I've clamped a piece of 1x10 to my bench. I'm just going to take a carpenter square, and it helps us if this is pretty straight, this long edge. But I'm going to mark across, and I'm going to line that up. And you want to clamp this in place so the board can't move. Recheck, and I want to have the sensation of pushing up against this edge as I cut. Now right now, this is a Rip Jig. Next we're going to convert it to a crosscut squaring jig. Now you can make these jigs any length that you want to, but you can also make them any width you want to within reason. And I've got a lot of flange back here. I'm going to cut this off and we'll put a straight edge on the front that will make it automatically square up against our board. I went ahead and cut down the jig off camera, so now it's only 12 inches wide. Now we can install the squaring piece on front. Now I've got a board here I found that has a straight edge. And if you don't have such a board or a way to make one, remember you can always go back and do what we did before. This is just a piece of plywood that has a factory edge on it. So you can just cut a piece of this out and use that as your squaring piece. Now we're going to countersink and install a 1 1/4 inch number 8 screw here on the right corner through the guide. This will act as a pivot point. And now using the carpenter square, I'm going to put a layout line here for the crosscut. So now we'll take our jig and square it up on the cutting line. And we're going to tweak this until the entire cutting surface on the jig is lined up on the line. Carefully clamp it in place so we won't lose our alignment. And we're going to make sure that we have a secure clamp on either side of the jig. Pull this into the board, into this board. Now we'll countersink first. And then I'm going to install a 1 1/4 inch number 8 screw. So that should be square. We're going to cut that line. Now since we let the guide piece extend beyond the jig itself, we can actually use it to clamp to. We also need to add one more clamp just to keep it stable and eliminate any movement. So now let's put the square on it and test. And unfortunately, it's almost perfect. And if almost is good enough for you, you can stop right here. Otherwise, we're going to have to redo it. Now start by drawing another squaring line. Then reposition your jig on the board and remove this screw that's securing the jig to the squaring piece. Line it back up and clamp it back down. Now countersink a new hole in the guide and reinstall your screw. Don't use the old hole. Now make another test cut and again test it for square. And once you have it set up and cutting square, all you have to do is make a small mark on your board where you want to cut. Then you line it up and clamp it down and carefully zip it off. It's just that simple. And when you want to use a long rip jig, which of course will not have the squaring piece on the end, but all you have to do is mark each end of your board carefully and then line up your rip jig on it, clamp it in place, and make the cut. Now at some point in time you're going to mess this edge up, and of course this edge has to be straight and accurate for you to make straight and square cuts. Now if you do that, all you have to do is move this piece back about 1/4 3/8 of an inch. You can see I've already done that once. See this line? That was the original line. When you do that, move it back, cut it off again, and then reset your square up here if it's a squaring jig, just like we did in the other example. Now as a young man, I started just this way with a circular saw, a drill, and some hand tools. And it's not a bad way to start. And these jigs will really help you with the quality of your work. But now understand, like me, you may get bit by the woodworking bug. And if that happens, like me, you will probably spend thousands of dollars over the years on table saws, and miter saws, band saws, lathes, you name it. But it's a wonderful hobby. So folks, be sure to send me your questions and your comments, and I will get back with you. Also, be sure to go below and like our video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell. We'd really appreciate it. And I think that's going to wrap it up for today. So until next time, thanks for watching.